He's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minute! Attention, citizens of fair Gotham. Welcome to Bat Minute of the Phantasm, the show that is swiftly swooping towards the end. Oh, I'm sad. I am one of your hosts, John Parker.
And here, featuring the voice talents of me, Niall McGowan. It's me, Niall McGowan.
The talent. Talent? Really?
Hey, you have this carefully honed skill over nearly 5 whole seasons now, this thing, man.
But we are joined by a guest with talent, somebody, a director you may have heard a little about, listeners. We are joined by one Dan Riba.
Oh, wow, well, thank you. Yes, hello everybody.
Hey, Dan is specifically one of the directors of this very film, the one that we're talking about right here. So. Thank you for joining us. We're very, very happy to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
We've had nothing but joy talking about this. We're not just blowing smoke up here.
Yeah. I mean,
it's been great.
Wow.
It's like one of the things we would ask like straight up most of the guests is like, oh, what's your history with Mask of the Phantasm? When did you first see it and stuff? But like, I guess your history is like, well, they phoned me and they said, hey, Dan, we're making a movie.
It was more like in the office. There was no phone involved. We'd go to work and somebody would say, hey, we're making a movie now. Only at that time it was direct to video. We didn't know until we were almost done with production that they were planning on showing it theatrically.
Yeah. I heard. I was actually genuinely curious. Like, so you're a sequence director, but you're one of several.
Yes.
So, like, was it like you getting this work? Because I know this quote from Bruce Timm saying that he was more freaked out about like having to reformat the framing and stuff like this. Did you find it all like intensely stressful? Or because there are multiple directors, you're like, oh no, we can deal with this because it's not one person having to take the whole load. Or was it like the most stressful thing that you've ever been through?
No, because we had already done a bunch of episodes, and so we were already used to taking a 22-minute load. So when something was cut up into little bite-sized morsels for each director, it was business as usual.
Okay. Great.
So there wasn't as much stress in that regard because we were just making. It was like, oh, we're just gonna make another episode, but all of us will be working on it together.
Oh, that's quite nice. The collaborative team feeling.
Oh, that was the nicest part about it. Actually, is that we all kind of like supported each other and egged each other on, and we'd see each other's sequences, and it was a blast. It really was fun.
Which sequences in particular then are all, because trying to go through like the production history, there's a lot of it's just marked down. I was like, yeah, this is a list of all you guys, and I was like, sequence director for various bits.
Right.
But like, which sequences are yours in particular?
That's a thing. A lot of guys were more interested in acting. And so Boyd got a lot of the romantic flashback stuff, but some dramatic things. So some of the cemetery stuff was his. Kevin insisted on having the Joker stuff. He wanted the ending. So he got all the action at the end. And then Frank did the opening section where not the opening section, but the section where Bruce Wayne hits that smuggling the truck thing where the gangs are and where he's not quite yet Batman, and I believe he did the motorcycle the gang fight. He might have done that as well. And what else? And the one romantic thing with where Bruce Wayne is practicing jujitsu, and Andrea kind of comes upon him and they kind of tumble into a little.
Of course.
And I got the rest. So Bruce boarded and directed the opening sequence with the fight scene and Phantasm's first introduction. And I directed the cemetery scene where Buzz Bronski gets killed by the
it's like one of the best sequences in the whole film.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite episodes to record of this.
Wow. Well, that was Doug Murphy storyboarded that under my supervision, but he did a wonderful job. It was so much fun. And then I did let's see, the little bits are out. I believe I did now, because this is, believe me, it's a long time ago. So there's and I have some of the models from sequences that I thought I directed. Then I realized I think Boyd might have done the party scene, but because the acting of the characters kind of reminds me of his work more. So I guess I didn't do that, but I have all the models from all the women in this and that.
Why not? Who cares? They're yours now.
And I boarded the sequence where Bruce Wayne finds the photograph and of the tall man, as we called him in the script, and draws the little red lips on him.
I actually have a couple of questions about that in particular, because one thing I'm assuming it might be the case, and maybe I think if it was a script thing, you mightn't be, no one mentioned it to you, but calling him the tall man.
Yes.
Is that a direct reference to Phantasm? Like the Phantasm franchise, because Angus Scrimm character in that is called the Tall Man.
Oh, that's a fascinating idea. I didn't think so. That's an interesting notion. I don't believe we were thinking that hard. You'd have to ask Alan Burnett. This is a good question to ask him when we have our screening in November.
No, you're supposed to pretend and be like, "Oh, we're geniuses. Yes, we came up with that."
Well, somebody is. It's just I wasn't made aware of that particular thing, and I saw that movie, so I'm like I was a fan of that film. So that's ironic.
It could be a coincidence, but it's unlikely. It seems like too much of a coincidence. Phantasm.
There's one that people keep shooting me down about, and I'm going to be heartbroken if you just go no. But there's the fact that at the end, when Andrea is unmasked, and she's fighting, the Joker, voiced by, Luke Skywalker himself.
Right.
Oh, this one.
And she's dressed in black, and she's got one glove and one bare hand, much like Luke Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi. And I was like, is there any chance that that's a little, it's an intentional nod? And every person I've brought it up to has been like, no, what are you talking about? But if you were just to say, just for my edification, that yes, that's 100% definitely what you were all going for, you would win me a lot of cokes, I think, really.
Okay.
I'm going to just edit that okay as a complete confirmation, and that's 100% yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. That it might have been in the back of somebody's mind, but
maybe it was unintentionally done. I like the idea that it was done, though, Niall. I like your concept there.
I mean, considering that we were, huge Empire Strikes Back fans and all that stuff, we were very big on that. But honestly, she had a glove with a big scythe on it, so a big can opener that had to be removed to make her vulnerable. So it is more about that, but still, the image of that, interesting. It's I'm just saying, chalk it up to a coincidence that fits into something that would make Empire Strikes Back fan happy.
I should also ask as well then. I've got so many questions now, but actually, but two sequences in particular. We know because obviously going through it minute by minute, we've got a draft of the script and the novelization and stuff to hand, and we noted that sequence of drawing the smile on the Joker's face. Someone brought it up to us recently that, again, this is probably a complete coincidence, but there's an episode of the 60s show where Adam West draws on a picture of a guy who turns out to be the Mad Hatter. Does the same thing of draws on the hat and the glasses and stuff, and he's like, oh my god, it's the Mad Hatter and stuff. And there's maybe it was an intentional riff. I'm gonna guess probably not, but again, if you
it's possible that Alan sort of channeled it from his youth, because we were all watching the show when we were little, and so it's not impossible, but I somehow don't think it was a direct inspiration, but a lot of things are sort of instinctual because we'd watched things before and incorporated into the film. So. Oh, by the way, other stuff I directed. By the way, I didn't even finish to get all of the sequences. The rooftop scene with Bruce Wayne, with Batman spying on Andrea and Arthur, their dinner. Was I directed that sequence.
It's like the 2001 lip reading.
Exactly.
Yeah, great.
And you realize I bumped into Gary Lockwood and found out that he came up with that sequence in 2001, which was amazing because I'm like, wait a second, what? You came up with the thing that we borrowed what?
Oh, amazing.
He was amused when I told him that sequence was, had inspired a shot from our film.
Yeah, but that's another again amazing. It's an amazing shot, and just particularly that still of Bruce or Batman when he's got all the rain running down his face is just like, and then the reflection of the hands and the binoculars is just really just immaculate stuff,
And then the last section that I recall being involved in was the Sal Valestra's death scene where Phantasm comes upon and then runs away, escapes. Then Batman confronts that section, and then the chase into the construction site, and Batman having to use the horse thing to the construction to evade the police. Yeah. That was also my section.
So you're directly responsible for traumatizing a generation of people with that jump scare of the Sal Valestra corpse behind the newspaper.
I know, and I'm still bothered by a retake that wasn't in there because the original take had like pink behind his teeth, and that was sort of retook it. We retook it with black, but then one of the shots didn't get called or didn't come in time, so one shot is incorrect. And
how did we not notice that?
I don't know, but I winced the last time I saw it, going, wait, that one's wrong. Oh no. How didn't we get that?
Step in and George Lucas it, do a special edition.
right boy. I hopefully I haven't seen the Blu-ray yet, maybe they fixed it there.
Well, maybe. Although sometimes I know because I do artwork myself. And sometimes when you're just like, you're too close to a thing, you're always the person who focuses on like the things that you know are wrong and that everyone else is like, what are you talking about? This is amazing. So everyone ends up being their own worst kind of critic.
Well, that's what ends up happening to this film for me, because it went to some good studio, but not our best studio. So that the animation quality isn't nearly as good as some of our better episodes. I don't think it compares to On Leather Wings or Heart of Ice or the Clayface Part 2, the Feet of Clay Part 2, or the Two-Face Part 1, or it's just there's so many down the line that have better animation that we're like, oh man, so I kind of wince because sometimes this stuff is like, it's good, but it's not as great as it ought to be for a feature. But
was there a conscious decision that you know of that they gave it to that studio then and didn't go with the top tier? Was it just time?
Time, money, and it's possible that that top tier studio was busy because they were along with our show, they were handling Animaniacs, and so they did the title sequence. CMS did the title sequence. And eventually picked up a few episodes. But to be honest, they turned us down. They said, we'll do your title sequence, but we're not going to do any episodes. We want to work with Steven Spielberg on Animaniacs. And then it wasn't until the title sequence came back wrong. And they actually over-animated all the thugs, and they didn't understand the graphic nature of Bruce's storyboard. They didn't understand that the graphic, black stuff was sort of that was built in. They actually drew out all those characters, and it was beautifully animated, but it was over-animated and not what we wanted. So when it was rejected and they were told, no, you got this wrong. They suddenly realized that these two young upstarts, Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, actually knew what they were doing. And they kind of went, wow, okay, I think we want to work with these guys because we want to show them that we know what we're doing too. And because they were at the time arguably, like, outside of Disney, the best animation studio in the world at that point. TMS had just done so many wonderful things, and they were working for Disney. They were doing a lot of the TV stuff, the Gummy Bears and all these things, and they were doing marvelous work for Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. So they were a phenomenal studio.
Terrific.
So
it's
that's origin story.
But I just want to ask quickly again, though, going back again to the Drawing the Smile on the Joker.
Yes.
When we went through the draft of the script we have,
yes,
that whole sequence is actually different. It's a whole thing where
it's a computer, isn't it?
Yeah, he goes out of the back computer, and there's a whole sequence where like he's comparison, face composites, and then it talks about like swirling visuals and like laughing fish popping out, and then like the face of the Joker emerging, and we're like, oh, why did they cut this? Why did they go for a much more ironically, a much more iconic and simple idea of just like draw the smile on, there you go.
It's got to be speed, right? You just want to get we just need to get to the point.
But like, would you have been involved in why that was taken out, or were you just like, no, I was just told to do the thing that I'm told? And
wow.
That was.
You know what? You know what? I have a copy of that script, and I haven't read it in 30 years. I think that by the time it had gotten to me that was edited or it was discussed to simplify.
It reads as a very like kind of psychedelic thing that might have taken a lot more time to do, like in terms of just like there's a lot of visual flourishes they're mentioning and stuff. So we kind of thought like they must have thought like, we'll just make this easier,
Well, and the other thing is that it's it's one thing for a computer to analyze chemical composition of the gas that Phantasm is using. Those are the things you need a computer to analyze. The use of the computer to solve a problem, I think, kind of takes away from Batman's abilities. And I think that was really what it was about. We want to make this, what kind of, it was sort of annoying on, the old TV show, and Adam West would just pop something in and a computer would like answer. And they never really did that. They actually would like set stuff up so that he and Robin would solve the puzzles and solve the clues, or, it was always just an address that you got from the computer, or something like that. It's like they actually were the ones that would, and we didn't want to have the computer solve our problems. So I'm pretty sure that was the choice, because there were several incidences on the show where we kind of made more visual representation of something rather than have the computer solve.
I mean, good choice though, because again, that's one of the most iconic images from the movie. Is
right, because once you see that thing drawn, it's like you hear the laughter and you go, oh my gosh, and then we go to the scene where he's there, it's funny because a lot of people go, really, you had to just draw lips and this isn't really much of it. But I think it worked dramatically pretty well, even though it just seems like you don't really need to draw the lips when you look at that guy and go, oh yeah, that's a trick.
But also too, notice that Buzz Bronski's death, I think, was different in the script as well. There was almost like a saw trap where he pulled a rope and like the grave started filling up with soil, and like the goons come and find him, and it's just his contorted hand sticking out of the grave. But like,
that's a nice visual.
It was one of the ones where like, I mean, that's it. I imagine it probably got cut because it's like, I know we can get away with things that we couldn't get away with on, Saturday morning television, but that might be a bit much.
It's pushing it slightly, yeah.
Well, I just kind of like the visual representation of the line, "Your angel of death awaits," and it's a statue of an angel that comes down and clubs him, and buries him essentially. I think it's and also the gruesome whatever happens to him, is more gruesome off screen in that case.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's all that goon's one delivery of man, like
Yeah.
he does everything for you. It's
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that was really more the reasoning.
I found that most of the off-screen stuff was the creepiest. Like, when Carl Beaumont's killed, it's off-screen,
Yes.
essentially.
Yeah.
Like the Joker walks into he walks out of the house while Andrea's going in. I was bringing up at the time, I didn't want to see, because it now makes it kind of scarier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Technically, listeners, we are here to talk about minute 73.
Minute 73.
This is a bit different, though, Yeah, minute 73 starts with the exit of a hero, and it ends with the names of many more heroes, the real heroes of the piece, in fact, our loves. But we do start, we're back with Batman staring into the night sky, gazing upon the bat signal.
Yeah.
Ready to renew his vow once more.
Just get the iconic bit of the Shirley Walker score kicking back in, and then kicking back in even more when it gets into because we had the choral voices doing it first, and then the instrumental, and it's so good. It's as a sequence director though, because we're 5 seasons in now, but we've done all our 4 previous seasons were all live action stuff. And so we kind of had an idea of how these things work. But so when they're doing sequence directing, and you've done several amazing episodes of the BTAS, the main show, and of course a lot of Justice League, because I've been rewatching Justice League as well. And nearly every other episode is there is again, Dan Riba, the name just keeps popping up. But would you ever have to go and talk to Shirley yourself? Would you obviously then Andrea Romano is doing the vocal direction.
Yes.
So what kind of relationship do you three guys have? Do you have to go? Do you work in separate departments and it all just blends beautifully together, or do you come and actually speak about what's going on to make sure that it all blends together?
To be honest, no, because I've been lying to you up until now. Here's those parts you want to edit. The music was sort of its own thing to some degree, where Bruce and Eric would have meetings with Shirley about individual shows. But it wasn't like I was completely out of the loop, because there were things where if I really had strong musical ideas, I would bring them to Bruce and Eric, and we talked to Shirley about it. So so when it came to one of the other later shows, The Legends of the Dark Knight, we had ideas about how the music would work for the Dick Sprang old, the old 50s Batman. And so I had a tape of the 50s Batman, not Batman, the 50s Superman series, and all of the sort of library music that was used for that. And we were very cautious not to have any of that sort of action type music from the 60s show, because we didn't want it to feel like a representation of that show. We wanted that show to feel like it was rooted in the 50s, more serious, and more sort of serial inspired than the Adam West series, which was campy. We didn't want it to be campy.
Yes.
I mean, not musically campy. I mean, there's something inherently campy in the material, but that was that we didn't want that expressed musically. So I lent her these tapes. She got it immediately. She knew exactly what we were going for and the kind of editing that she wanted to make the music sound, because it was the thing with those old shows was that it was a sort of library music, that the scores had existed. They pull these sort of different dramatic themes, action scores and whatever, and sort of cut them together to and that's kind of what she wanted the thing to. She was scoring it to sound unscored. So it was interesting.
Oh wow, that's an odd direction to have to give.
Yeah. So that was the one time that I actually interacted with her. Besides, like having invitations to watch the orchestra play music from Mask of the Phantasm, which was unbelievable to see that.
Oh wow,
You know?
wow! So you got to go down and see that recorded live.
Not the whole film, but a few sections. Yeah. I mean, the whole recording took a while. But yeah, it was amazing because the orchestra was big and booming and huge and just extraordinary to see in person.
Yeah. It's one I do more, particularly over here. Maybe over like in LA and stuff, you might get a bit more because I know you guys like all over there. There'd be like John Williams is coming and playing the Hollywood Bowl and stuff every other weekend. But over here, like we kind of always just like big orchestral things. And we're like, you'll get a lot of it, but like you might get people coming out to play like the Hans Zimmer soundtracks and stuff.
Right.
And we had I saw Danny Elfman doing, conducting his orchestra.
Oh, I was jealous you went to that, you scumbag.
That's funny.
I would love if there was just like a touring orchestra just doing all the BTAS themes and stuff like that. Just to hear it live in like an auditorium would be just incredible. There
is a YouTube video of an orchestra recording the Justice League theme, which was really marvelous because that was synthesized. Because we had budgets cut eventually on our music when it came to that show. Finally, they kind of like went, this is a very expensive show. We can't afford the orchestras, and our musicians were phenomenal and were able to replicate that sound. But it was really just a few instruments or synthesized simulating an orchestra. So they were able to shave a lot of money off the budget by doing that. But it was so heartbreaking because the idea of like going to see them, seeing an orchestra play the music is gone now.
Yeah.
But it was an era that was cherished, and I feel privileged to have been a part of something that was the way things were in the olden days. And I know you probably don't know the history of that with Warner Brothers, because cartoon music traditionally was never really done that way. It was always library music. When I was working at Deke, you'd have a library of scores that was usually supplied by Saban, but even at H&B, Hoyt Curtin would do these marvelous little pieces of music for Johnny Quest, and sometimes things were scored to a theme of an episode, but it was always sort of like different kind of sound bites, little clips of music that lasted 30 seconds or a minute and less, and then little handles to shorten the opening and shorten the ending, and a sound editor would edit the stuff to the picture when it come together, and that was traditionally how TV animation was done. And when Spielberg was doing Tiny Toons, he wanted it done like the old days. We're obviously scoring each film, right? And Warner's was like, well, no, but if that's what you want,
you don't say no to him.
Yeah.
So, because of Steven Spielberg, Tiny Toons was done that way, and then after that, we were done that way, and that was like the new way to make cartoons. And so we have Spielberg to thank for bringing the orchestras back.
Excellent. Even more things to love about him. Come on.
Right.
I mean, finally Steven Spielberg does something good. I mean, come on.
It was a legacy of failure up until that.
That's one thing I did note, though, in this minute in particular, actually, is because when it goes into the credits and stuff, there is, because obviously, beyond this minute, you get into the Tia Carrera, I never even told you, but my feeling always was that, like, this little bit of music, though, as soon as it goes to black and there's this very somber bit of strings, that's the best part of the song. Like, that's a really good. Then you go to the soundtrack album. Right. That's not on the song. That's clearly like a little thing where someone, presumably Shirley, was going like, you can't just go into, you can't kick into the saxophone and stuff straight away.
Right.
Atmospherically does not. Although, maybe I don't know, Is this one of your sequences, Dan? Like this Batman jumping off the thing at the end and stuff?
But I don't remember who was directing that, if it was Bruce or Boyd or I don't know. I don't know exactly, but I do remember that the storyboard. I'm almost positive the storyboard was drawn by Ronnie Del Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
So he directed Inside Out and was a story director at Pixar for years. So
Wow.
so he's a dear friend and a genius, and he's a brilliant artist. And so yeah, he did the cemetery scenes with Andrea and Bruce Wayne, and so all the really fun character acting bits. That stuff he did wonderful.
I mean, this ending in particular, though, is just so well. It's very classic Batman, you know. Just
it's the most Batman he's been in the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
But I do love the blending, though, of how like.
Yeah,
it's got the heroic music, but it's so layered in tragedy that it's just like.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, that's he boarded the section on the cruise where she's by herself, and we see her in the shadows, and then he ended buttoned it with the Batman on the rooftop thing, and I think what's interesting that that Alan's idea that was sort of. How can I put this? Sort of revolutionary when it comes to Batman was this idea of the tragedy of his parents' death and the vow being made turned into something heroic and wonderful. And Alan kind of subverted that into saying, but what if he had a happy life? What if he was given that choice? What if something happened that to make that vow even more tragic? So that the time he puts on his mask and becomes Batman for the first time, it's actually not a heroic moment. It's a sad, tragic moment because it's a guy whose life is now lost essentially into this to this crusade, and that he's never going to be happy now.
That's why I found this a really bold way to go out. Because it's like visually heroic, like you said, Niall, but. I was really sad because like this guy, he's given up on moving on having a happy life. He's accepted this is all there is now. It's made him a better Batman, but not a better man.
Exactly, and it's the first time, and that's why it makes it more special than a lot of the films and what the other films don't quite get right, which is kind of interesting that the Pattinson film where they actually said they looked at Mask of the Phantasm as an inspiration because the idea of the choice to be Batman is a sad one, is a tragedy. And it's not as heroic as upliftingly heroic as you'd kind of think.
So did you enjoy the Batman? Like, are you too close to this stuff now? You're like, I can't watch these things anymore. Or were you like there opening day to be like, Batman, let's go, baby?
It's funny. There's a mix of both, actually. I love Batman, though. I mean, clearly, and what happens with that one is, I think that there are things that I had issues with, but for the most part, it's like, holy moly. They found a new way to have him into a room and make him scary, which I thought was kind of cool. The footstep thing was really neat. I think of Batman as some sort of urban ninja, but the idea of him clumping into a room and people just sort of quietly like staring and everyone just in awe of this crazy guy in a batsuit. It was kind of cool.
I think they did that a few times in the movie. Something I really liked was when the car makes its first appearance and you just the way it just revs.
Exactly. So
he's a real strutter, that Batman. He's like when the Penguin crashes his car as well, and he's like his proper spurs jingling and jangling as he's walking up to him and stuff. It's great. It's great.
No, so that stuff was really, really powerful. I really, really like that. So
I felt that was the first one to me to feel like the comics and graphic novels I've read, because the ones I tend to gravitate to are the more serious ones because I'm edgy like that, so it felt like that. It was like, this I could be reading this,
right. Yes, exactly.
So because we're at the tail end of the movie though, Dan, and we have gone through it minute by minute, I do feel compelled to ask you though, like, do you have a favorite sequence from the movie that you would go like, this is my favorite minute, or is it always like, no, the whole thing is just there's so many.
The Joker scenes are phenomenal. I think that the Arthur in the hospital scene trying to suppress the laughter, and then Batman comes in. The Joker scene also with him is incredible, and those are just always like the lighting and the acting is so strong in that, and that's
it was terrifying.
It is really terrifying, and it just like there's something in there that I don't think I've seen captured in the live action, and so I really love that.
That was the thing I was always baffled by in that, like, because I know Chris Nolan was like, I'm making it serious and I'm making it like this, it's going to be as realistic as possible and whatnot. But I didn't think, like, I was a bit gutted that Ledger's Joker never utilized Joker Venom, like, because it's such a chilling thing, like
right.
and in particular, that sequence in particular is just like, look at how horrible this would be that this guy is like. My personal headcanon with Arthur Reeves is that he doesn't recover from that. Like he ends up, it's a slower death, basically, is what I get.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
But I know that Paul Dini did write there was a sequel comic book and stuff, but that's
that would be canon. Well, that would be canon, but
yep. I did actually. I remember too, because again, been going through Justice League. And there's that episode, The Cat and the Canary, which is like the Black Canary and Wildcat and the underground fighting ring and stuff, which is like watched by a bunch of just rich people, assholes. Yes. There's a guy at a ticket booth getting a ticket, looks so much like Arthur Reeves that I was like, I wonder if that's a little like that is him. This is him back in his sleazy, political kind of,
Well, I tell
ways.
you how that works is when we're doing these shows, we had access to a library of all of our character designs, and sometimes you don't have time to design a crowd scene, so we would pull people from our deep dark past, and somebody thought that it would work to have that face in that place at that time. It may not have intended to be Arthur, but it was like the idea of like that kind of sleazy face fit the appropriate location. But it would be interesting if that's what he's doing now.
I mean, it's exactly the type of thing he would be doing. Like, I'll go to watch a bunch of people fighting in an underground ring and hang out, smooth it up with my rich buddies.
That would totally fit. That would totally fit.
But we do get into the credits and stuff. We do get the range of people. Of course, Hart Bochner himself, phenomenal as Arthur Reeves. It feels like a backhanded compliment, though. It's like, he sounds so sleazy and so oily. That guy.
He was every time he plays that part, it's perfect.
Yeah,
is that a good thing?
Well, the thing that was so funny is that he's the son of Lloyd Bochner, who was our Mayor Hill. So that was really cool because Hill was never really supposed to be a positive view of politicians, really. He was always kind of sleazy in his own ways.
Politicians do bad things? What?
What?
No.
What? No, he just, it's just very self-serving, and he would have gone after Batman if it fit him politically, but then eventually it doesn't. So he's like, all right, now he's got to kind of like side with this guy, but and then of course Batman saved his son in some episode, so it was like, all right, so I guess he has to kind of
and dial it back a little bit, but and then of course that we do get at the very end of the night you do get the classic and featuring Mark Hamill as the Joker. You mentioned there earlier, Dan. Of course, you said a big Empire Strikes Back fan.
Yes.
Like, do you remember like hearing the news of like Mark Hamill? That's our guy, and like, what do you remember your reaction have been like? Because so many people had that thing of like, Luke Skywalker is the Joker. What? Like, for real?
Well, so many people didn't get to go onto the lot of The Flash to see him perform as the trickster before he was the Joker, and I did. I got to actually to sneak on the lot and watch some filming for that. So I got to
Awesome.
see him perform before it aired, and so I knew what he was capable of. And so when he became our Joker, I was like, oh yeah, he can play a maniac.
And now he's considered the maniac. He's
Yes.
the Joker, isn't
Yeah.
he, to a lot of people? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, he's so good. It really was, when we originally cast Tim Curry, I thought, oh, okay, well, we got the guy, it's Dr. Frankenfurter, and, it's like, yeah, sure, I get it. And so there were a couple of reasons that we recast, and so it was fortunate because Mark Hamill is such a nerd. He's such a geek about.
Yeah. He's a joy to listen to being interviewed because he's so enthusiastic about all the stuff. And he's like, this guy's just in his element. He just loves all the stuff that he's doing. And I was like,
that's what I love about him. He seems to genuinely be into the movies he's making. He's not just making a movie.
Right.
He's like, oh no, I'm really into this. This is great.
and specifically comic books. I mean, I remember interviews when Star Wars came out, and he made reference to the fact that he kind of likened the Jedi to the Green Lantern Corps. And this was, and ironically, what Lucas was doing was really based on Doc Smith's Lensman. He was sort of tying the Lensman to a sort of Japanese religious order, kind of, but it was clearly inspired by the Lensman. And when they were revamping the Green Lantern, they also were ripping off Doc Smith and the Lensman and making them the rings, the lanterns being the police force of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So that's what Mark had in interviews talking about how he viewed the Jedi, and so. Yeah, that's a geek, to know that, and
we love it.
And so he did a voice for us in Heart of Ice, and he really enjoyed it, and so he asked, right there, he's like, I love this. This is wonderful. It shows like it's going to be great. And mind you, we hadn't seen any footage yet at that point. This was early on. But he knew it was going to be great, and he asked, this is so much fun. If there's anything I can do to be a recurring character, to come back in any way, I would love to do it. And so they remembered that, and when we were recasting the Joker, he was called. So I mean, there was a huge list of people that auditioned for that recasting.
Oh. Do you know any names? Like, or is it that's under lock and key? We can't talk about that kind of thing.
It's a secret.
No. There were quite a few. It's like I know Ben Vereen. The I don't know if you ever saw All That Jazz. He gave an interesting performance. Harlan Ellison actually gave an interesting take on it. Matt Frewer, who came back and did a voice for us.
Awesome.
Max Headroom himself.
Let's see who else. There was quite a few. John Glover we gave him the Riddler. He was perfect for the Riddler. Unfortunately, we had issues writing Riddler episodes, so he wasn't as prominent as he should have been because he's too hard to write for.
I can imagine so. It's just like the Riddler. The big thing is, and like, well, you got to come up with some good riddles,
Yeah,
like,
you got the plots and the riddles have to really make sense, and they couldn't, So it was tough. It was tough to do that.
Yeah, I will say though that was one of my favorite episodes of the animated series is Riddler's Reform.
Well, thank you.
Which goes and there's one of the most iconic moments in all that is that bit where the Riddler thinks he's kind of like showing up Batman, humiliating him by like, look, Batman's in my office, like trying to incriminate me and stuff. And Batman's kind of like, his reaction is like, oh, I'm keeping an eye on you. Yeah. There's that flash of lightning, and you just see like the outline of him, of the cape spread, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, impressionable kid as I was like, that's some good stuff. That was the.
And again, I believe that was boarded by Ronnie Del Carmen. He did that sequence, the party scene, and then the fight in the jewelry store where Robin gets the thing it's laid up with a bookcase, case lands on his leg. But the idea of which is really funny because we had edicts that we weren't allowed to break glass. The characters couldn't go through glass, and the irony of guys taking panes of glass and throwing it as a weapon was really hilarious because we weren't allowed to break glass, but we're using glass as a weapon, which is also imitatable behavior in a way.
Yeah, totally.
but standards and practices didn't get us on that. They let that go because
it still seems so crazy to me that because I as a kid when Batman Forever came out. And the big clip they always used to promote it was him coming through the skylight and stuff,
Yes.
And then from '89, one of the big moments is him coming through the skylight. It's Batman comes through skylights.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
what he does. What do you mean you can't use that in the show? That's what he does.
Exactly. Well, we did it too, but we'd have to do it in ways where the glass and Batman weren't shown in the same shot because I believe he does the same thing in the Riddler show. But I think you kind of see them start to go through, and then you kind of see glass fall, and then they come into the scene. So the network was actually pretty good about letting us have broken windows and glass, but we'd have to do things where having characters throw a chair out the window first and then they go out the window, which is probably worse in a way because you could get, there are always shards of glass that you could get cut up on jumping out of a window with broken glass as opposed to breaking the glass itself. You might actually be less injured if you were actually breaking it.
I think you're right, because if you're breaking it as you go through, you're not going to be just immediately scraping across jagged glass.
You're making those jags, but you're probably pushing through, and most of the scratches are going to be happening on impact later.
Just goes to show they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't really care.
Yes and no. We were blessed with a BS&P that we were able to argue things with them. They understood story and they understood the nature of the show. We got away with things that other shows couldn't get away with at the time. I worked in Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon stuff through the 80s, and it was paralyzing how the networks had the BS&P had a grip. Standards and practices just did not allow anything, and nothing was negotiable. You just did what they said, and there could be insane and have ideas that didn't make any logical sense whatsoever, but you weren't allowed to do it because somebody read something in a book somewhere that something going right at camera was upsetting to children. So nothing could ever roll towards camera. It always had to go over the camera to the side, whatever, but something come directly at camera. It was like, no, kids get upset by that. And you're like, for crying out loud. So it was such an absurd thing, which was funny because we have characters getting punched in the face, and we know it because they let us have a fist come right directly at camera, and then the screen would go white. We weren't allowed to show a fist contacting a face. That was not allowed, but exactly that a fist is making contact because it's a POV of a guy getting punched, and you're seeing Batman's fist fill the frame. So, that would never have been allowed anywhere before that. And
that's always best when it's the suggestion of what's happened. So technically, you're getting around it. Yeah.
And with even on our first show with on Leather Wings, they let us have a little bit of blood in that episode, and that there was an edict of not having any blood. But in that case, they let us have Batman bleed a little bit because it was argued that the impact that they make against the wall when Man-Bat and Batman hit that parking garage wall and drop onto the pavement, that there should be some repercussion from this violent act, or kids are just going to go skateboard right into walls and think that they're just going to be okay.
There you go. You've got to show the negatives.
Right. And it's not like we're going to put a helmet on Batman's head while he's riding on Man-Bat. That's absurd, because it's like, so they thought, okay, look, we have to show some kind of repercussion of this. And they went, you know what? I guess that is a responsible thing to do. So we got a little bit of blood on that one. But
isn't there I think the only notable edit I remember from this movie, because obviously you have things like Batman's boot hitting the Joker's chin and a tooth flying out and stuff like that.
Right.
But I know there was a sequence with a Batman bleeding and it starts to drip down on the. Is that the only edits that like the studio insisted upon, or were there other things that they're like, you got to take this out?
We didn't have a BS&P on the film, so that cut was sort of. I don't know how that happened in terms of like, oh, there's too much blood. It may have just been an issue of timing, of just like, no, we got to cut to the chase. We got to move this sequence faster. We've got to get this. So we don't have time to show the blood dripping from him as we pan up. But I think also maybe they just felt like if this ever airs on TV, that shot's going to get cut anyway, if that keeps, so they thought, maybe they were preempting an edit to just kind of like get it, So I don't know what exactly the reason was, like, yeah, we've had enough blood. Well, yeah. I guess, but
you can never have enough blood.
Yeah, but
never.
But I do like the idea of like, the idea of Batman struggling and this fight having impact on him. It really, we want to see. We don't want to see everything easy, and he has to struggle to be dramatically interesting for a fight, or else it's just like boring, So the idea that our Batman bleeds.
It's like it's another comic. You have the Batman who laughs and the Batman who bleeds. There you go.
Oh yeah, coming soon.
Yeah.
Hey folks, so just hopping in here in editing to say that this is only like the tip of the iceberg of this recording. That we got so much more material with Dan Riba, so much so that I've decided to split this episode into a two-parter. So this Wednesday, instead of minute 74, you'll be getting part 2 of minute 73. And from that then on Friday, you will then get minute 74, then next Monday, 75, 76 on Wednesday, and the final episode of Mask of the Phantasm, or Bat Minute of the Phantasm, minute 77, will be then the following Friday. And then make sure to stay tuned to that episode, because there'll be some special announcements about what we'll be up to during the hiatus. And it's not our usual kind of stuff, so you might want to make sure to tune in for that one. But anyway, next time, what other recollections does the ribald Riba have for our intrepid broadcasters as we cascade through the closing credits? We have more BTS and chronicles on working with Kevin Conroy in part 2. Dark Knight devotees, same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
Must have dope, still fit,